What's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Please follow my Instagram at Russo Lifts, just in case something happens to this YouTube channel. You can follow, message, and you can watch my daily story content on Instagram. I'll see you there. What's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well with the GOAT, the King of Macedonia, Alek I. We have finally come together despite the time zones, and Alek's building like a couple of blocks down burned down. Nothing's fucking stopping us here, but I don't know, Alek, if you saw the news, but Cedric McMillan sadly passed away, and now in the news again, you know, bodybuilders dropping dead like flies. Obviously, it's a very big issue with current events. There's obviously ploy towards certain current events in history that just played out, as well as just the overall issues with being a pro-level bodybuilder, but let's just broaden the topic to not just Cedric, because rest in peace, Cedric. The full autopsy's not out. We're not going to sit here and speculate. But let's go into, exactly, like, why is the enhanced bodybuilding route obviously not good for your health, and go into, like, the specific paths people seem to fall down. And let's make the distinction between the juiced up gym rat, which, in my opinion, more psychological issues, versus someone competing, you know, that is obviously aware of the inherent dangers of them going into competition cycles, the diet, the diuretics, the, you know, insanity of competing. Right. So how do you clear the air with all this, Alek?
So looking at it from two perspectives, one would be, and this I touched upon this during our podcast when I went on a rant about D-Trend. The thing with this is that from a layman gym rat's perspective, this whole era is really counterintuitive to their brain, essentially, because people are chasing instant gratification and they're getting rewarded for it. So, like, you have poster boys on Instagram that openly glorify drug abuse, essentially, you know, making memes, joking about trend, about, you know, some dangerous shit. And whenever there's where the time comes for liability and for ownership, that's when they're like, oh, it's a joke, and, you know, it's a joke, you know.
Relating that to my path, it's like, I never chose to be that character, right? Like, Alek and I, like, because I saw a lot of the criticism of Alek and I back at us is like, oh, you know, Alek, you've done drugs since 18, and Russo's like a walking pincushion, like, but me and Alek never made it out like there wasn't inherent consequences, there wasn't inherent dangers.
So the thing is that, we've started early on, but we are very meticulous and conservative. People talk shit on you, which is very funny to me, that you've done all this crazy shit. And I mentioned this, I think, on the podcast with Tony. The only legitimate cycle that was, you know, unwarranted and kind of stupid was the transformation challenge that you did, where you actually blasted high doses.
And you were under the impression that I did the 30-day, when it was really a gimmick cloud cycle. That was only a week, and then I cut it out the minute I flew home.
Right. Well, I'm just going off of what I've seen. You know, I agree. I wasn't watching everything in full, but like that was my. I can see why people have that notion and that perspective, but it's very false, because, you know, you haven't really done a proper cycle.
I'm transparent
up until now.
You see, like, Alek, I'm sure, like, you're a coach, you know, people are probably lying about the dosages they're actually shoving in your ass. You're probably telling them, like, hey, take this specific dosage. In their head, they're taking more. I think I'm probably one of your only clients that legitimately admits to you I'm taking less, rather than the opposite.
Right, yeah.
You know, people come on YouTube and it's like, oh, it's TRT, it's HRT, or it's this elevated cruise, when in reality, they're loading up syringes in their bathroom.
That's true, and here's the problem, though. Taking the route of being real and being honest about your drug abuse, like a lot of the influencers are doing, like, oh yeah, I blast trend this and that. That's basically a gimmick to escape from liability and accountability. when in reality they should not even they should objectively talk just harm mitigation, and that's it, and only if asked about their personal cycles and whatnot privately they can answer, not lie. You can just privately answer people that want to know. So my point being is that
Well,
from
here,
a
Alec, I'll
perspective
battle
of
you
the
because I'm
average gym rat.
battling you this time because this is speech and debate class, right?
Okay.
The people who are
Right.
in that corner who you're poking at are going to say, well, I want to be real about the extreme dosages I'm doing, right? Alec, because you're
Right.
harm mitigating, you're not being real on what it actually fucking takes to get massive. And since I have to
No.
shimmy myself down, you're trying to censor me, is the angle they'll come at with that debate, which is a
No.
fallacy, but that is like the pushback right now because you have a lot of the biohackers in the space pushing towards harm mitigation, right? Like, why do you need to like do the crazy dosages and everything for like 95% of people? Like, going crazy with the dosages doesn't really yield anything, is the biohacker's perspective. But everyone else is like, oh, well, what happened to old school bodybuilding? What happened to like juicing and getting big? Like, this is what it's about. You're hurting our cult. Like, these 2 points are coming to a clash, and here we are.
Both ends of the spectrum are wrong. There's no absolute truths. The reality is somewhere in the middle, and my perspective is that first of all, you have a sport or a lifestyle rather where there's nothing off the table. So
Right.
all drugs are allowed, right? As long as there's competition between humans, people who try to have an edge
Right.
over somebody else, because you have to keep in mind that bodybuilders do not have any, in general, they don't have other skill sets or endeavors or streams of income. So they cannot half-ass it at 32 or 33, knowing that this is all they have, and they're depending on how they look, their sponsors, the social media and whatnot. So that's the pressure that I have. Another thing is, as far as being knowledgeable, the old school bodybuilders, or rather the pros, most of them, and just looking at their gurus, that really do not
And
know
they're coming
shit
to
about
Alec
even
behind the scenes,
dieting.
everyone watching. Trust me. They're coming to Alec
Yeah,
behind the scenes.
I've seen such insane bullshit that I'm like, if you don't know this and you've been coaching for 30 years, like how do we go even into pharmacology if from a nutrition standpoint you don't know shit? Because I've seen really ridiculous statements and protocols which are mind blowing. That's why we see people dying from diuretic abuse, having acute kidney injuries and so forth. Now, if you look at bodybuilding from a fundamental standpoint, you know that it's the only sport essentially that's really running you towards your grave. So it's extremely focused around building tissue. It revolves around maximizing the growth pathways, and when you do so, you by definition
Are not chasing
cut
longevity
off the.
whatsoever. Opposite.
Yeah, you're cutting off. You cannot have cellular repair and autophagy if you have constantly stimulated growth pathways. So, take for example mTOR C1 complex, which is the main growth pathway in the body. Bodybuilding as a lifestyle checks all of the boxes that are mediators for activating mTOR. So
Break
you
down
have
mTOR
you have
more layman's terms for some, 15-year-old trying to educate himself
it's
right now, Alec.
It's it stands for mechanism target of rapamycin. It's a drug that when it was discovered, they found that it greatly prolongs lifespan. It actually doubled in some cases a lifespan of mice. And they've seen that, that's essentially how they find the pathway. And they went into researching, what causes the increasing longevity. And they basically started off with the hypothesis that we're discussing right now, and it came essentially to a conclusion, to a truth. So mTOR is being mediated, the cellular growth pathways, via energy intake. So bodybuilders are eating at a caloric surplus, right? They are training. Training alone increases it. You have growth factors like insulin, IGF-1. You have amino acids, which
And
bodybuilders get
go
in
into,
abundance.
Alec, what happens when you raise IGF-1? What happens when you're replicating at a faster rate your cells? What is that essentially doing?
Like cells can divide a certain amount of times. Once they achieve their limit, they go into apoptosis or cellular death, or they just become senescence, which are inactive cells, and they have a potential to essentially be cancerogenic over time. And that's another problem, is that stimulating the growth pathways and not having cellular repair or autophagy would essentially lead to a higher risk of actually developing cancer. And the other just mediators of growth, they exponentially increase the fatality of it, and the development. So you have all the check marks being checked when doing bodybuilding, and it's not only you having them checked, it's the degree that matters as well. So add androgens on top of that, which increase the expression of mTOR, plus the other things. You're essentially just pushing the gas pedal on growth, and there's no longevity in this. So just by definition, this sport as a sport is killing people.
Right.
Like there's no way
Right.
around it, and it is what it is. And you mentioned that people that are the pros, they sign up for it and they know. I don't think they know. I don't think that they know what it on a cellular level, and what it does to the body, like, because their coaches do not know shit about this. Like this is this is being discussed the past 3 years by researchers, biohackers, whatever. And like even on the internet, like, on YouTube, there are like a handful of channels that discuss these things, that are likely to be viewed by
Well,
somebody that's interested in bodybuilding.
I feel like, especially when it enters the pro ranks, like you realize unless you're the perfect, insertions, genetic year response to gear,
Right.
you're gonna have to dive into those dosages where if you have anything up there, you're like, yo, I'm using
Right.
a lot of stuff here. This is not gonna end without something, presenting itself in the future. I would hope. But I agree with you. I think people are delusional, and I feel like these guru coaches that hide in the smoke screen, we'll just do your blood work, you'll be fine. Meanwhile, Alec is over here scanning everything, did dosages less than, most of these pros, and found issues. I've found tons of issues in my blood work, let alone in the West. It's very hard to get those scans without, like, getting on your knees and begging
Yeah.
a doctor, right? So,
Yeah. And also the doctors really do not know, because a lot of the times we as individuals, as test subjects, are very hard to guide, because nobody comes to an endocrinologist or whatever doctor you go to and you're on 30 fucking drugs. Like that really complicates things from just a pharmacodynamic standpoint and pharmacokinetics, because drugs interact with each other, and they can also, and this is a knock on the biohacking side, people use the excuse of biohacking, where they just read a bunch of studies on PubMed on various of different drugs, and they basically just slam everything they can get their hands on, with the excuse being, "Oh, I'm biohacking," which is the same shit that bodybuilders are doing with the intent of just solely building muscle. There's no
or they
difference,
have no realization
Uh,
that, like, they're all gonna cause cascading side effects together. Like, I have a lot of guys in my DM box, like, I'm taking this nootropic with Tren, and I'm like,
right.
bro, the nootropic and Tren are gonna directly fucking throw off your personality. Like, you're not
Let,
fixing these issues by stacking a bunch of other drugs on top.
Let me give you an example. So, for instance, with myself, I've had drug-induced lupus, which is lupus-like syndrome. It mimics an autoimmune condition within the body that's induced by drugs, and it was induced by blood pressure medication. So when people were knocking on you for why aren't you on ARBs, why aren't you on,
When I knew
you
I was going to
know,
lose a bunch of
when we
weight. I
start,
knew the whole time I'm going to lose a bunch of weight.
I yeah, I told you, you're on EQ, you will be on trend, and your blood pressure is significantly lower right now. You're barely in stage 1 hypertension. You're 130 over what, 70 or what was
70.
it? And prior you were north of
Yep.
145
Yep.
constantly, and you were not on drugs. You started off
Right.
natural. So like people just wrote in the comments that you should get on,
Because
all
they
of these
sit on
drugs.
certain channels and then after they're fucking experts without even getting on camera and showing their face. And then they go around
Exactly.
being like, oh, well, if you're going to do this cycle, then you definitely need to add the blood pressure
Yeah.
mitigation stack.
Yeah.
This must be built onto
Yeah.
the cycle as well. Fuck actually looking if you need it. Just build it in. Implement it in.
Exactly.
All of a sudden you have all these other issues that you don't even research.
Exactly.
I was an idiot back in the day and used AIs. Like I thought they were like side effect free. Like when I was
Mandatory.
younger, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I need an AI. I read this online. Everyone
Yeah.
tells me, hey, you do this amount, you need an AI. Screw actually looking at what my estrogen was. Screw actually looking
Exactly.
into all the side effects of AIs. And people are doing that with much worse drugs.
Yeah, and also it much worse drugs, and also drugs that impact the one thing that is understood the least, which is the brain. So that's my knock
Yeah.
on biohacking. Because there's no free ride.
No.
Like anything has a
Right.
consequences, whether that's acute or long term. But the whole thing of biohacking is utilizing as little shit as you
Right.
can possibly take in order to get to where you want to be, not to get there faster. Because when you add the faster notion prior to getting to the destination, that really exponentially causes the problems. The chase, the trying to achieve things faster. There's never a plus side to instant gratification.
And
It's always a
not to
process.
throw rest in peace. I met him in person, most humble guy ever. And there's a certain guy on Young LA that's also in the same predicament. But I'm a name drop Dallas McCarver. Like you saw his progression.
Right.
Look at the speed of his progression, Alec.
Right.
Every other
Yeah.
guru, he's got to slow down. He's got to slow down. He'll get there. He wants it now. He's got to slow down. That's how all these bodybuilders are. Do you think the coaches are pushing them that hard?
Yes.
Or do you think that they're just like, no, coach, like, I need to keep progressing. I'm addicted to this progression.
is
like,
that-
I must progress at this much each year. And if you don't have me doing that, I'm going to look for someone else, which puts this coach in the
Okay.
perspective like, oh, I need this guy. He's my racehorse, right? If I lose a racehorse, I can't charge as much to my normal clients. So, fuck it. If he wants to go hard, let's go hard. Let's sign the death contract of, hey, you know what's going on here. We know what's going on here. Let's go. Like, what do you say to that, Alec? Because you're
Yeah.
about to be one of the biggest coaches this next coming year.
If somebody says that to me, like, I would drop them, because I don't want to be a part of something that I don't fundamentally agree with, and it is what it is. I don't give a shit, because like, I cannot knowingly tell you to kill yourself or not even prevent you from doing so.
But what if
you
it's
do
like
not-
an MMA
if you do
fighter
not-
argument of like, Alec, you're my coach. I want to fall on my shield. I want to go as far as I can. Look, I'm like almost at, the Olympia stage on open. You're put in that predicament.
Good coaches, even in those instances, will
Right.
throw in the towel. Like,
Right.
nobody wants to see their athlete having
Right.
brain damage, even in MMA.
Right.
In MMA, look at what happened in boxing with
Right.
Muhammad Ali. You think like would he do things differently if he had the opportunity to? Like, let's be real. So I think just a really a poor mentality, and it really pains me that I see this, and especially it speaks volume for not only the coaches but everybody around them, their family, their friends, like everybody's circle jerking them. rather
Again,
than
I'm playing devil's
saying
advocate with
how
you,
it
Alex,
is.
this one. But like, when you look at the family, like, this person dedicated their entire life. They fell in the addiction rabbit hole. This is all they do. It becomes a predicament
Okay.
where, like, you know, do I really want to be like, yo, like, I'm worried about your health? And then they're going to be like, oh, I got Alec as the coach. You know, he's the best. And, you know, I'm watching myself. But any actual guy in biohacking, any actual guru knows if you're pushing that much tissue constantly as your age creeps up, it doesn't matter if it's muscle or fat. It's actually worse if it's a bunch of tissue, right? More blood demand. Your heart's only got so many
Yeah.
beats in it, and your heart was never designed to be like this unit super freak walking around.
The thing is that if you need a lot of shit to get to places where great bodybuilders have gotten, even I wouldn't go as far as to say naturally, but like even within their first cycle, like we know what happened when Ronnie started using gear, when fucking look at all the genetic freaks. Phil Heath, how he looked during his basketball days. Jay Cutler at 16, whatever, Lee Priest at 14. So my point is, if you're not that advanced without much shit or any at all, like you're not the guy. Like you're not the, like you don't have an objective future in the sport, like being top 3 Olympian, top 2, or even winning it. So like why does it warrant the end of your life prematurely? Like how do you put a value on that? How do you gauge that? Like it's not worth it. It's not. Like I can see, for instance, somebody like Chris Bumstead, who's like Mr. Olympia, and now he's facing an issue, autoimmune issue, and now he's like, how many can I get? How risk reward ratio, millions of dollars. Like I can understand that situation, but people have never gotten to the point where Chris Bumstead is. They haven't been Mr. Olympia. They haven't even turned pro, and they're killing themselves along the way, like from the get-go. So like where does it does it lead? I mean, it's ridiculous. It makes zero sense. I know that I don't have genetics to be an amazing bodybuilder. You don't have the genetics to be an amazing bodybuilder, and it is what it is. I don't give a shit. Like you just find your place in the sport, in the industry, if you like it. Play your part, and you can be great at it, and even make more money.
Not our physiques. The physiques are just an asset of our minds. But to other people,
Exactly.
the physique is all they got. They don't spend the time building
Exactly.
anything else. And that's really, in my opinion,
Exactly.
what leads to most of these bodybuilders' dooms. They get obsessed with this lifestyle. They get addicted to the euphoria of the drugs, how they feel on the drugs. And then instead of one day, hey, my body can't take this amount of drugs for this long. Let's either get off, or if I can't get off, let's do HRT or a little bit of elevated cruises, and let's not go nuts with it. The people who go nuts with it, we all know what happens eventually.
It's really bizarre to me how people in this sport essentially are taking things without even asking themselves, okay, what does this do to my body? Like, what's the mechanistic target of it? How is it being
Alec,
metabolized?
we're nerds.
Or if you don't want to
We're
get
nerds. We like information.
Okay.
Most people in this industry, they're not even close to nerds. We both like information. You got to realize that there's people that, when you spout all that medical shit, they're just like, bro, just like keep it super simple, man. This is bodybuilding. Keep it more simple. Like you're talking out the ass with all this science. Like it's not computing in my head. So just shut up. Bodybuilding is about taking gear, getting big, using big dosages. Just like you're overcomplicating it, Alec, right?